Dude, so, being up there, back to this. I mean, we're all over the place in a good way because I like this. I like it. People, some people have said the conversations just seem like two guys are having a conversation, or you're having a conversation with a woman, or whatever. It's just like off the cuff. And it is. I know enough about you and we have a familiarity. But, I'm also interested in, like, I personally, it gives me an anxiety attack thinking about being in my apartment for 2 weeks without going back to that, without being able to take the garbage out, without going to order food, without, or going to get food, or walking my dog. So what day do you start to go, it hit me, I'm fucked, I'm getting anxiety, I'm going down a spiral, I can't? Or were you fine?
You know what, man? Having never done it before we flew up here, I was panicked because I do have clinical anxiety, and I have for a large part of my adult life. And I was like, I'm gonna be a mess, which is also why I was happy to have my buddy.
Yeah, seriously.
And so, it's amazing. But day 4 or 5, I was like, I could do this forever. I mean it. If I didn't miss my friends and my family, I mean it, man. And I didn't know. I was terrified. I was mortified. We had called friends that were here, and they were like, hey, will you put some canned chili? Like I was going to war. It was like, can you put some MREs in my...
Get Jared some canned chili.
I was so panicked. And then also I was with my kids, 8, 6, and 3, and my wife, and they were concerned. They were like, you can be all right? Are you sure you don't want us to go? I was like, I'm good. Man, I'm good. Baby, I love you. We'll FaceTime. It's great.
How often do you talk to your family? Do you talk to them 3 times a day or just once, or what?
I guess it depends on the day. I mean, I just lived with them for 5 months, from March 13th to August 2nd.
So be honest, they're not going to listen to this. You were ready to get the F out. You needed a little break. Daddy needed to go to work and have...
No, and by the way, that's not a secret. Like, a large part, it's more difficult. I say this, I mean, this will give me a perfect opportunity to compliment my wife, who's just a fucking stallion, man. Like, she just does so much. And, I'm used to, I'm like, well, baby, I have to film, and it's a stunt scene, then an emotional scene. I have to get there. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a badass. And then I get home, and my job is like, take out the garbage. I'm like, I can't take out the garbage. Like, I have to, blah, blah, blah. And then you realize, like, holy shit, like, she has no time for herself and still does the world's best job. I mean, I'm way out of my league. And this is going to sound like I'm being as honest as humanly possible. I'm out of my league. And seeing her in her element and getting there in March. So March 12th, we filmed our last day of season 15, because March 13th is when when Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, was going to make his speech. And they were like, oh, they're going to shut down the border, get home. And so Friday the 13th, a plug for my movie, Friday the 13th from 12.
Yeah.
We ended up getting sent home on Friday 13th of March. And, I got home, and I had just done, we had a convention in Vegas the weekend before. I had run the Austin Marathon the weekend before that, or maybe 2 weekends. Either way, it had been like busy. Give me a job. And then it was like, okay, you're home. And I was like, what do I do? Put me to work. And Jen's like, make sure the kids don't fight. We don't give them snacks at this time or that time. And I was like, okay. And I was looking around, watching her do what she does, and I was like, holy mother.
She's got a routine. She's got it down. She knows exactly what's going on.
Down. And also, as you know, from acting for decades plus, it's like, well, okay, I need 10 minutes in my trailer. Like, you don't get that when 3 kids are running around.
Could you imagine? You're just like, what, Shep?
Yeah, Tom is 8, Shep is 6, Odette is 3.
Shep, I'm going to my trailer. No, you're not, Dad.
Here's what happens. He goes, okay, Dad, I'm going to come with you. And you're not going to go like, no, you will not come with me. I just want to sit there and cry for 5 minutes and then get back to it. So they want to be around. They're like, Dad is home. And so then I was like, the new toy. It's like, wait, Dad is home? And, you have 3 2-legged alarm clocks that are jumping on you and waking up. I'm awake. And at work, even if I think the first day back to work, we had an exterior daylight shot. And so I think our pickup was like 4:45 a.m. or something, because it's still summer hours. So it's bright in Vancouver at 6:30. So they're like, we need you ready by 6 so that we can go straight to filming 6:30, because the sun goes down. We lose the location. And I'm like, okay, that's going to suck, but I'll nap at lunch. There's no napping at lunch when you've got a bunch of kids running around. So to see Genevieve do that.
Oh, dude. You know what's funny? When I have a friend come over, like every Christmas I have like a couple of my friends with their families, and my friend,
Yeah.
single guy has everybody over the house,
Yeah.
and the kids are there, and I love the kids, but when they leave after like 4 hours, I'm like, yeah, they could leave. They could leave, and it's always when you're dealing with other kids, you're like, oh my god, this kid's so cute, or this is so cute, I could do, and you're dealing with it for an hour, and you're like, good, I can walk away now. But so kudos to your wife.
That's called uncle, man. That's called uncle.
Yes. And by the way, but your wife and all the women out there, or stay-at-home dads, or whatever it is, I'm not saying this to go, oh, look, like I'm just support. It is so obvious that women have it, or men, or stay-at-home dads. You're watching the kids. There's no job harder. There's no effing job harder. I see it last night. I was in a Zoom call. We did a stage it. So I play music I do. We're making a new album. I'm making a new album. My guitarist.
I loved your last one. So
Thanks. Get it on.
Hell yeah.
No, but so we're there, and I'm on a Zoom with a couple people because they won or whatever, and they're on there, and the woman's at 2 a.m. in England. She's just like, she has her baby who's crying. I'm like, and I'm just like, holy shit. It was I think it was Carly. Shout out to Carly. I think it was Carly.
Hi, Carly.
But anyway, holy shit, like. Like when you're married, someone works, both work. I don't. It's so terrifying. I look at my parents and how they did it, and I always say I've come to a conclusion. I've worked my ass off in therapy, and you know what? Hey, I love you guys. You did the best that you could. I'm not saying you were the best parents by far.
Yeah,
but you did the best that you could, or you knew how to do. But for all those parents out there. I just your wife. That's terrifying. It's so hard. It's like you got 3 kids bouncing around. You got to be on. I would have an anxiety attack because I'm like a OCD. Like I'd want to know where everybody is. Don't we can't put that there. Wait, put that down. You're gonna hurt yourself. I always would think someone's gonna start a fire or something. Yeah,
and you also feel like, well, I feel like you as an adult, you're like, okay, well, I see them doing something wrong. I better correct them every single time. Forgetting like, hey, they're 3. They're figuring shit out. Like don't terrorize them. Here's something funny, talking about therapy and talking about your parents being the best or the worst, is I've seen a psychiatrist. I've been very public, and I suggested and recommended to every human being on the planet.
Yep.
And without getting too much detail, I had a conversation. My psychiatrist doesn't talk a lot. Like he more forces me to suss it out myself and to admit things to myself before suggesting them, And one time, so he doesn't speak a whole lot. And then one time I'm on his couch and I'm kind of pontificating. And I was like, I'm just really afraid I'm going to fuck up my kids. And he goes, oh, you will. And A, he talked. And B, I was like, that's not what I'm paying you to say. But it was so comforting because we went into it then. And he's like, you know what? If you're the worst parent on the planet, it's pretty obvious how you'll, affect them in negative ways in the future. And but people don't think about this. If you're the best parent on the planet, then in some sense they live in your shadow. And they go like, I can't make my parents happy because they did the best they could. Dude, my mom's birthday was yesterday. Happy birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday, Mom.
You watch this. But, they went and met for a social distance. There's a great place called Salt Lake Barbecue, and I love going there. It's just like halfway between San Antonio, where my parents live, where I grew up, and Austin, where I live, my brother lives, and our families. And they met for a social distance kind of birthday brunch. And, they're great. I was enormously blessed. That having been said, no matter who's in your life, if someone's in that position in your life, there are going to be some things that if you have the wherewithal to look into it and to have professional help to look into the way you were raised, the way you grew up, your thought processes, then you're going to go like, oh, wow, I guess I do. Like, here's something funny. My buddy was asking me about the difference between a psychologist and psychiatrist. And I say this with no medical training, just with, experience with psychologists and psychiatrists. And I was like, so the best way, and this was on the moment, I'm really proud of myself, even though it's probably outrageously wrong if you're a psychologist or psychiatrist. So psychiatrists are more high ideal. Psychologists are very actionable. So my analogy, and again, maybe I'll get roasted, but fuck it, I'm going to say it. It's like a psychologist goes, if you say to your psychologist, like, hey, I go home at night and I eat a tub of ice cream, but I'm struggling with my weight. Then they'll say like, hey, well, you know what? Don't eat a tub of ice cream or buy lower fat ice cream or eat half a tub, like separate it into containers. It's very actionable. It's very make your bed.
Right.
It's very take the stairs. Okay, don't drive around for 5 minutes looking for a close parking spot. Park at the farthest spot you can and walk.
But what would a psychiatrist say?
So psychiatrist, if you're like, hey, I go home, I eat a tub of ice cream, they'll be like, why? Like, why do you want the ice cream? Were you rewarded as a child with desserts? You know, if you got good grades, would you get an ice cream date or a plate of nachos or some cookies? Like, is it even as an adult, you don't realize that I'm 38 with 3 kids of my own. And part of me, I love candy. I think everybody I know knows that. I love candy and I eat candy. And I remember, like, candy to me is going to theme parks. And here, my dad goes like, here's $2. And so I go to the arcade and get a bunch of tokens on foosball or skee ball or whatever. And because I knew I could get candy. So for me, like, candy is a reward.
Right.
And my new buddy, Keegan Allen, who's playing my brother in Walker, is he's very right. And I tease him all the time. He's very like, dude, don't do sugar. Like, sugar will mess you up. And I'm like, fine, I'm going to go have a Snickers or whatever it is. I don't like chocolate, but I'll have some Sour Patch Kids. But for me, sugar and nachos or whatever is a treat because we couldn't really afford it growing up. Like, hey, here's all the barbecue and Tex-Mex in the world. But, you know, we'd get good grades. We'd win a basketball game. I was like, hey, I'm going to make you some cookies. Here's some ice cream. And so I have this. So the psychologist is like, well, if you're struggling with weight, take the stairs, park far away, don't eat a full gallon of ice cream.
Psychiatrist is like,
why do you think you're doing that?
right.
You know
what I say? I always just thought the difference was because I have a psychiatrist and a psychologist, but it's not like I talk to him like every week but it's like, intermittent. I would say intermittent, but I need to call them. Is what I'm saying.
Do it.
So my psychologist sits there and she's amazing. Sandy, she's been on the show. I had her on the show. She's amazing. And she'll talk. She is so, and you're right. A good one will sit there and go, okay, well, why do you, it was different because my psychologist, she was always like, well, she's also a behavioralist,
sure. Yeah,
what do you call it? I don't even know.
Well, yeah.
CBT, what? I don't even know. And she will say, she will talk about things and why do you think that happens? Well, why do you think you do that? It's different. Where the psychiatrist is just like, they can prescribe you drugs. Psychologists can't. Psychiatrists can prescribe drugs. Really? That's the big thing. And also the psychiatrist, you ever notice, at least for me, psychologist is an hour meeting. Psychiatrist, 15 minutes. They just evaluate. They're like, okay, how's everything going? Okay, great. I'm like, I heard about this drug gabapentin or this calisoprolol. Or this bondrocogidin. It really gives you, it's like, well, we could try that. I mean, it's just, so that's how I always think. A psychiatrist gets you the drugs. Psychologist kind of like talks you through shit. Now, I've done a lot of, when I'm here, by the way, I love this conversation. It really,
I love all the conversations.
Well, I was just.
You call. Atlas came to work and he's like, yeah, I just talked to Rosenbaum. And I was like, well, he didn't fucking call me.
No, I was calling both of you.
I know. You don't answer my phone. Yeah.
You don't answer your phone.
Come on, man.
It's true. But I will say this. I'm just saying this. You're incredibly enjoyable. Like, while you were talking the other minute, you have like my energy in a way because you're like excited. You want to talk about stuff. And I like it. It's easy. I can just like talk to you forever. So back to.
If we were in person, I'd kiss you with tongue right now.
I know. Well, a COVID kiss. It'd be a six. It'd be just like a Buffalo Bill kiss.
Right. I can do that too.
So. Did you have anxiety? Because look, you had obviously good parents. You're saying I'm not. My parents, again, they tried the best they could, but it was just more of a thing where my dad was like the kind of guy, no therapy, no emotions, never seen him cry, nothing. And the other day, I asked him because my half sister, he remarried and he had a daughter, and she's had this chromosomal defect for. Okay. She's a trooper, but she's like 15, and she's incredibly, like, she's not going to make it. She's not going to, and she should have like passed when she was born. The fact that she's lived this long and she's just not lived a good life. And it's always been she's been in the hospital, and not for a lack of, they've done, my parent, my mom, my dad, my stepmom, they did everything they could. The best doctors, there was nothing, there's nothing that could help this disease. It was just, and so he's been struggling for a long time, and it's been really hard. But like, I said to him, I've never seen you cry. I go, blah, blah. He goes, I cry. And that was all he had to, yeah, I know. And I was just like, it's sort of like for once in my life, I feel like, and I know this is about you, but this podcast is about us. It's
not about me.
It's like my father, it's like my father and I, after all these years, have sort of come to a place where he respects, I'm sort of like, you know, I'm an entertainer. I'm all over the place. I'm funny. Maybe I do all these things. I'm just the point is I'm different than him. And I finally feel like he's accepting me for me. And at the same time, I'm sort of doing the same thing, but also watching him, you know, be more compassionate. Like, so there's this appreciation. So that's all I'll say about that. But anxiety, did you suffer anxiety your whole life?
I don't say suffer, not anymore.
Are you on medications for it?
I'm not. Not about, my point is that I do believe in the power of
love,
self-fulfilling prophecies. So if I say to myself, like, I'm suffering from depression, I'm suffering from anxiety, I'm suffering from this, then I'm the victim and I can't do anything about it. If I say to myself, hey, if I say to myself this, man, for those 2 weeks in quarantine, I suffered from anxiety. I had a Garmin on my arm and it tracks your steps. I'd have 20,000 steps someday in a 3-bedroom apartment. And I don't say suffer. I fucking hate that word. And here's my favorite saying: pain is mandatory. Suffering is optional. So you will deal with pain. Pain is universal. There's not a human being on the planet, whether they're born a billionaire or born, you know, in a terrible, terrible situation. Pain's going to happen. You've dealt with pain. You will deal with pain. I've dealt with pain. I will deal with pain. It's my choice whether or not to accept it and try and deal with it, or to allow it to make me suffer. So suffering is my option. So I don't suffer from anxiety. I've dealt with anxiety. I have a relationship with anxiety. But these days, I see it as a school bully, and I deal with it.
I love that. I love it, Jared. I think it's so important, because I remember my psychologist said,
yeah,
hey, anxiety could be here. Anxiety's in the back seat right now. I've said this before. Anxiety's in the back seat, but you're driving. So you can know it's there, and you go, hey, what's up? No, fuck you. I'm driving right now. I know you're there, but you don't get to drive this car.
I feel like there's a podcast I listen to or something where somebody's talking about death in the same way, and how they were terrified and mortified of death and their mortality, and the fact that, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to wake up one day or go for a walk. And they were like, and now they've become a welcome friend. Like, they're in the passenger seat, and they'll say things, and they're that friend that you disagree with, but you love them. And you're like, hey, you know, death is telling you, like, hey, this is all going to end. This could be the last time you take a right at a stop sign. Hey, this could be the last time you have a Diet Coke. Maybe a piece of rib gets caught in your throat. And you either believe that person. And I've met a lot of people who have had some pretty severe, who have dealt with, not suffered, who have dealt with pretty severe anxiety and depression and suicidal thoughts. And I get.
Hold on a second. Hey, quiet!
Is that your pup? Is that Irv?
That's the puppy.
Yeah,
I have a puppy too.
Little cameo, man. Hey, Irv. He's like, I heard Coda was on the podcast. When's my turn?
Well, Irv's also 90% deaf, so the neighbors probably think I'm screaming at him. I go, Irv, get over here! But you can't hear. I'm not yelling at him. Go ahead.
He's hearing a whisper. But I guess I just try, when people are really dealing with it in a big, big way, there's some bit, and I've used it in my own life. This isn't me like proselytizing, like, well, if you take this pill or practice this mantra, but I have found that accepting that as part of my life makes it welcome. Like, if I wake up and I don't feel anxiety these days, I'm like, what's wrong? Like, what am I not aware of? You know, honestly, God,
that's smart, man.
It's taken a lot of money, a lot of professional help, many, many years. But these days, and not that I don't falter, not that I don't sometimes just get in my room and cry or something, but by and large, I remind myself. So I watched Genevieve go through natural childbirth twice. She set out to do it 3 times. We had some issues with our 8-year-old. His cord was around his neck twice, and it was kinked, and we ended up going to a hospital then. But then I watched her 2 times give natural childbirth, you know, no Advil. And she didn't say those exact words, but I got that she was like, you know, when there would be contractions, she would sit there and breathe through it. She's a fucking boss, man. But she would breathe through it. And ultimately, after the fact, she was sort of like, you know, I knew it was going to hurt. I knew it was going to go away. And there's a great, it's not Rumi, it's Reiki maybe. There's a great quote about something, deal with the highs, deal with the lows. I'm bastardizing, but no feeling is final. So accepting there will be pain. Like that's part of life. Life can suck for all of us. And life can be amazing for all of us if we choose to focus on that. But dealing with no feeling is final. This is painful. You don't have to suffer.